Welcome to Unfair with your favorite co-host, Jimmy. You could have been doing anything else in the world, but you chose to ride with us, and we appreciate that. It's solo weekend, so I will take the wheel myself to navigate you through the sports landscape of the hottest topics, late-breaking news, things that make no sense, and a few things that might surprise you. And as always, you can catch us on WMQG Radio Tuesdays and Saturdays at noon Eastern. So today, I want to start off the show differently than any other time that I've done the show. I have a 2-minute clip that I want to play for you. At the end of it, I will provide the context and analysis from the clip itself. But for now, I just want you to listen.
In the conversation of 5-10 years ago, it was always who's greater, who's going to be the greatest, him or Jack. And that conversation is pretty much over to most people.
I beg to differ, and I'll give a different analogy to that because, first of all, you're never going to say who's the greatest of all time. To me, I think that's more for PR and more for selling stories and getting hype. Jack and Tiger never played against each other. They never played in the same tournament. They never played with the same equipment. They never played with the same length of golf course. I never played against Will Chamberlain. I never played against Jerry West. To now say that one's greater than the other is being a little bit unfair. I think when you can see the similarities and you understand, this is one way you can judge the two. How much impact did each change or evolve the game? Jack during his time when he played, but Tiger during his time. Now, obviously Jack won more during the time he played. Tiger evolved it to where it was, it crossed a lot of different boundaries, where it's not just a white guy's sport. The black guys, Afro-Americans, all the minorities play the game. And you play at a level to where it generated so much interest financially that it grew the game from a financial standpoint. Now, does that constitute him being the greatest, or does that mean he's any less than Jack? I think is unfair. Jack probably has 18 majors and Tiger's got 14. And I think those are when, that's how people are judging certain things. I won 6 championships. Bill Russell won 11. Does that make Bill Russell better than me and make me better than him? No, because we play at different eras. So when you try to equate who's the greatest of all time, it's an unfair parallel. It's an unfair choice. And I think, those are the demons that, obviously Tiger had to live with, and he's going to be challenged and he's going to be graded upon that. But for me, I think they're both great. I would never say one is greater than the other. That's me. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Now, probably 98% of you just on voice alone know exactly who that was, who did the majority of the speaking. For those of you who don't know, that was none other than Michael Jordan, MJ His Airness, the Michael Jeffrey Jordan, regarded by probably 75 to 80% of basketball fans as the greatest basketball player to ever play. And this was actually taken from a recent interview on Cigar Aficionado, of all places, with Marvin R. Shanken. And I guess it's kind of interesting to where it's a show about cigars. You can catch it on YouTube. It's about an hour long. It's an excellent interview, actually. But when you have MJ in front of you, you can't help yourself but to bring up those types of discussions or to swing it to basketball. And MJ can't help himself either because that's the sport he loved. That's the sport that, in a sense, propelled him to where he is. And the reason why I wanted to play that is because that needed to be heard by every MJ fan, every LeBron fan, every MJ stan, and every LeBron stan. Because what he said, that message coming from him as opposed to, say, a Bill Russell or a Jerry West or Dwayne Wade, Charles Barkley, whoever it is, any of the all-time greats, for that message to come from Michael Jordan means that we all need to listen. It means that those words are going to have much more of an impact given who they're coming from. So the very second I got done listening to that, I realized that after all these years that I've been engaging in these GOAT debates with other individuals, primarily LeBron versus MJ, that Michael Jordan is 100% right And we who have ever engaged in the GOAT debate, in a sense, are 100% wrong. And if you'll notice, he kept using the word unfair, and shout outs to MJ for plugging the show 4 to 5 times over, because what he was talking about not being is exactly what we're trying not to be on the show, which is unfair. We try to be entertaining and engaging when it comes to the world of sports, but fair to everyone. And what Michael Jordan said was probably the most fair thing I have ever heard when it comes to the GOAT debate, because what he emphasized is, how can you say one player is better or greater than another if they played in different eras, if they never faced each other, if in virtue of playing in different eras, they played in different styles of basketball, they played when the game was officiated differently, they played when not as many regular season games were played, they played when there weren't maybe as bigger, stronger, or faster of an athlete as there were in eras that came after that. So he's talking about the game is so different from era to era. The game changes every 15 to 20 years. So to say one player from one era is greater than another is unfair and wrong to do. He's absolutely right. I mean, this is MJ we're talking about. Like I said, 75 to 80% of basketball fans believe he's the greatest of all time. So he has every reason, and he has all of these pieces of evidence to say that he is the greatest of all time, especially coming on the heels of LeBron James winning his 4th championship, and many people, such as myself, saying that he is the greatest basketball player of all time, even though I believed that before he won his 4th championship. So he had every reason to go the opposite direction and say, I'm the GOAT, 6-0. No one can say anything else to me. Look at my body of work. Look at my career records. Look how many points I put up, etc. But he didn't do that. And in watching this, I saw an MJ that I've never seen before, really an MJ that we're in no position to see, because he's very private. He doesn't really do interviews, and he's very limited in what he can say about today's players, given that he's an owner. And if he says the wrong thing, he could be fined by the NBA, such as what we saw with Magic Johnson when he was the GM of the Los Angeles Lakers. So this particular MJ is wise and experienced and reasoned, and as much of a teacher as he was in this interview, made me appreciate him and his legacy even more, made me realize just how much the game needs him. And I wish that he was in a position, and not being an owner, to be able to mentor and teach and be interviewed by the greats of today's game, just in how much they could learn from him if he had the ability to talk to different players in different teams in order to further elevate the game with his knowledge and with his experience. But like I said, it's great. It probably is greater in a sense that he's an owner, the first African-American owner of an NBA basketball team. Well, actually, maybe the second. I think Bob Johnson was the first, Bob Johnson, who owned BET. So I'm guilty of exactly what he was talking about, in the sense of unfairly pitting different basketball players from one era to the next. Now, in this, they primarily talked about Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods in golf, them being the two greatest golfers, or regarded as the two greatest golfers, of all time. But as you can see, he got himself into that because this is something that he experiences, and he experienced this as unfair to the greats that came before him, like Bill Russell, Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlain, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and the greats that have come after him, like a Kobe Bryant or like a LeBron James. So I'm guilty of exactly what he's talking about, and it totally changed my views. It shows you that whoever you are, any GOAT debate that you've engaged in, especially if you've trashed another great player in order to elevate the player that you believe is the greatest of all time, we're guilty. Now, can a person privately even discuss who they believe is the greatest of all time? I mean, you can. There's a fun, reasoned way to do it. I do that. But MJ is even righter than that, in the sense of it's unfair to compare basketball players of different eras. Now, if you want to compare players who played during the same era, or whose primes were at the same time, who competed against each other, who robbed championships from one another, then maybe there's a greater argument to be made as to who was the greatest of that era when you consider championships, head-to-head matchups, and their complete body of work. But in terms of what MJ said, he's 100% correct. I'm glad he said it, and he has totally changed the way I see this GOAT debate, and he's opened the door for me to be able to acknowledge and appreciate equally the greatness of a Bill Russell, of a Wilt Chamberlain, of a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, of a Michael Jordan, and of a LeBron James, and whoever the next great of the next era is going to be. So I hope that if you listen to that clip, and if you listen to what I said, that if you've been guilty of this GOAT debate, pitting GOATs of different eras against each other, like I have, hopefully you can change your views, expand them, and just be able to appreciate the all-time greatness that we've seen in basketball, and hope that we can continue to see much more of it. So moving on from that, let's get into some NFL. We had some I won't call this big news because of the players involved necessarily, but it's big moves as opposed to big news in the grand scheme of what this means. So yesterday you had the Baltimore Ravens signing Yannick Ngakoue, who was actually traded this season from the Jacksonville Jaguars to the Minnesota Vikings. They got him in a trade for several picks in next year's draft. He's pretty much a stud defensive end, one of the better defensive ends in professional football. And now the Ravens of Baltimore in the AFC compare him with Calais Campbell, their big offseason pickup on defense, as well as one of their better defensive players, Matthew Judon. So you add Yannick Ngakoue, defensive end who can get after the quarterback, to a defense that's already top 5 in the NFL, and the Baltimore Ravens are in the works to sign former Pro Bowl wide receiver, formerly of the Dallas Cowboys, Dez Bryant. So when you look at both of these moves, you have to ask yourself, yes, anytime you can get two players like this and not really have to give up much of anything, or at least much of anyone in the building, is definitely a move you want to make. But moves like this from a team as buttoned up and a team as good as the Ravens actually means more than what you think. Because the reason why this Baltimore Ravens team has to do this and needed to do this was because of what they face in their own AFC conference. In your own division, you have the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, who look like the traditional Pittsburgh Steelers, with a defense that flies around all over the place, that can stop the run, that can get after the pass, and that can score, with just year after year the Pittsburgh Steelers drafting receivers that people underestimate, who go into their system, into that culture, and just produce and look like they're unguardable. Chase Claypool looks unguardable. Juju Smith-Schuster's a very good receiver. Deontay Johnson, their pick from last year, at times looks unguardable. And you have a healthy James Conner who's toting the rock behind Ben Roethlisberger, whose elbow looks 100% healthy. He looks efficient, clinical, takes less chances, and looks like every bit of the Pro Bowl quarterback that he was before the elbow injury. So when you face a Steelers team in your division that honestly they looked and saw and knew that they weren't better than, this is a move you had to make, because this is a season when you know your championship window is dwindling. You know that this defense is not going to be young forever, and you know that eventually teams are going to make things tougher on Lamar Jackson. As a matter of fact, he hasn't had a season anywhere near the type of MVP season that he had last year. So then you bring in for him Dez Bryant, and the majority of the sports world believes that they are going to sign him. They looked at their receiving core. And they looked at the receiving core of the Kansas City Chiefs and what happened to them when they faced the Chiefs, and they realized, you know what, we're not good enough. If we take this offense as it currently stands into the playoffs against the Chiefs, most likely the exact same thing is going to happen. So when you add a receiver like Dez Bryant, someone with experience, someone with Pro Bowl pedigree, someone who can be a red zone target, and then pair him with Marquise Brown, who, I'm sorry, can't be your number one receiver, just like Tyreek Hill cannot be your number one receiver, Travis Kelce is, then you've really got something that will help you to compete even more with the Chiefs. So maybe this evens the playing field when you get a Yannick Ngakoue to get after Patrick Mahomes, and you have a Dez Bryant to take some of the pressure off the pass game and be a red zone target along with Mark Andrews, and you make yourself more competitive against the Steelers in your own division. Then these two moves, I believe, have put the Ravens in prime position to truly get back in the discussion of being one of the top two teams in the AFC. So then on the flip side of that, you see the exact same thing the very next day, today, Friday, in the NFC, with the Bucs signing a one-year contract with Antonio Brown, someone who we've talked about on the show. I won't use this opportunity to go into all the off-the-field stuff, because we've talked about that before at length in previous shows. But for now, given that he's about to come off of his 8-game suspension, I believe is how it works, that he's going to sign with this Buccaneers team, adding him to a receiving core that at times this season has struggled to stay healthy, but still a Pro Bowl receiving core of Mike Evans, of Chris Godwin, Hall of Famer Rob Gronkowski, Pro Bowler Leonard Fournette, and Ronald Jones, the second, who's probably going to be a Pro Bowler this year, along with, the GOAT, 6-time Super Bowl winning champion Tom Brady. You add Antonio Brown, someone who for a 3 to 4 year period was easily the best wide receiver in football, or one of the top 2 wide receivers in football. This seems unfair. This seems completely unfair, both with what they've done and with what the Ravens done, and just how much it stacks the playing field in their favor. But, you see this a lot probably in business and such, that part of the reason why the richer become richer is because they do what they did in order to become rich in the first place, which is to take risk, which is to be aggressive. And that's exactly what these two teams are doing because they know that they're in a position to challenge for a Super Bowl. So the Bucs adding Antonio Brown and pairing him with all that talent, all that Pro Bowl Hall of Fame talent on that side of the field, along with the defense that has still one of the best front sevens in football and got after Aaron Rodgers like he stole something last week, then this even more elevates them as one of the favorites to reach the Super Bowl. And I think the Bucs, they had to be all in because they looked at what happened to them in that game against Chicago on Thursday night 8 days ago, and they saw how Brady and the offensive line got beat up, and they saw how they got manhandled and how Chicago was able to control the tempo of the game. And they thought, okay, if we face them again, or if somehow the Seattle Seahawks defense and Russell Wilson figures it out, or if the Saints figure it out, or if the 49ers get healthy enough to challenge us in the playoffs, then we need that extra added piece, that ace in the hole, in order to put us over the top if we face teams as tough as them. So if you have a receiver like Antonio Brown, one of the best route runners and some of the best hands in football still, I believe, you have somebody like him in the slot facing a nickel corner or your fourth cornerback, one-on-one coverage, it's a done deal. I mean, it's points all over the field. There will be nothing anyone can do to stop this Bucs team. So don't be surprised if at the end of the season we're talking about a Super Bowl preview show for the Baltimore Ravens versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you know what? If that's the case, they would have deserved it. Why? Because they made moves that no one else was willing or aggressive enough to make. And sometimes that's exactly what it takes. That extra detail is what it takes in order to put yourself over the top and in position to host the Lombardi. So before I get to the Frozen 5, let me hit you with a little bit of the news.
Jimmy has the news.
Thank you, Wendy. So the NBA is making some moves in terms of their scheduling moving forward. The NBA draft is going to be a virtual draft, such as what the NFL did on November 18th. It has been confirmed, and there have been discussions for a possible start just before Christmas on December 22nd, a 72-game season. And it's been reported that the goal of the NBA is to be done before the 2021 Olympics to take place, I believe, in Tokyo. I think with the success of what the NBA was able to do with the bubble, despite a little criticism from people like me, I think that they have definitely earned the right to not have these decisions questioned. I mean, these seem like the most rational decisions to make. It's going to be a bit of a squeeze because if you're doing your draft on the 18th and you plan to start your season on the 22nd, that means training camp has to begin probably maybe 2 to 3 weeks before the start of the season. But then again, when is free agency going to be? So all that is going to be smacked in between a month span if the schedule works out this way, which to me, I mean, it might be a little weird, but I think it's going to be even more entertaining to see all these draft picks, all these moves happening, and then before you know it, boom, the season begins again on December 22nd, leading into a December 25th Christmas Day full slate of games. So I think right now the NBA is in fantastic position to execute this schedule if this is what they choose to do. Now, back to the NFL, Dwayne Haskins, former starting quarterback for the Washington football team, now the third-string quarterback, was fined for COVID-related violations recently. Apparently, he booked reservations at the team hotel, I think perhaps in the team's most recent game, for a quote-unquote friend of the family. I really want to know who this was. I want to know if it was worth it for him to take this risk to get himself in trouble. Now, I think it was $4,000 plus was the fine. I mean, that's nothing to Dwayne Haskins because he has millions by now, but it's just the message of being fined and how bad that looks. I want to know who was worth it in order to, I guess, potentially put yourself in a position to be fined by your organization. And I think this is just another nail in the Washington football team coffin of Dwayne Haskins. Obviously, he's not going to be the quarterback for that team next year, but I think Dwayne Haskins can still play. I think he still deserves a chance. Still very young, still big with a big arm. He had a 300-yard game before he was even benched for Kyle Allen. So, honestly, I'm more excited and interested into what team he can go to next and further develop because Washington doesn't always do the best job of developing quarterbacks anyway. So, I think that he still obviously has a tremendous amount of football left in him, but you know, you got to know the rules. You can't make these kind of mistakes. He's young. He'll learn from it, and hopefully he can rebound and have the kind of career that he wants to have. Lastly, if you watched the Thursday night football game last night between the Eagles and the Giants, we saw quarterback for the Giants, Donald Jones, on an 80-yard scramble, then tackle himself by stumbling over his own body and thus not completing the touchdown. But they did score on that drive, but end up losing the game 22-21. I think that, to me, that's one of the 10 greatest plays that may be one of the 10 greatest plays ever in terms of quarterback runs. As a matter of fact, that was the fastest run by a quarterback since 2018, which is impressive given that we've had, a full season plus of Kyler Murray and about two and a third seasons of Lamar Jackson. So that shows you Daniel Jones really is an athlete, really has some wheels. And if he could ever learn to, properly read a defense consistently and not turn the ball over, because he's a turnover machine, then I think he could really be a good quarterback, especially in that division. But I think the time is running out on him, and people have said all day long that his 80-yard scramble stumble is just a microcosm of the season for the New York Football Giants, and I think that is an adequate metaphor. But I just had to mention that's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And with that, thank you, Bob. So before I get into the Frozen 5 for this week, I do want to mention the OSG report. The OSG is our resident fantasy expert for daily fantasy such as DraftKings and FanDuel, as well as season-long fantasy. We release his OSG report every week, usually on Saturday, on our Medium site. Medium is where we publish our articles, and we also release it on our Twitter account and on our Facebook page. Again, he does nothing but make money. I can testify to that. I've made money 2 to 3 straight weeks. I won't say how much, using his expertise and his research and analysis. He does it all for you so that you don't have to do it yourself. So get it now on one of these outlets while you can still get it for free, because after a while we are going to start to monetize it, because that's just what needs to happen, and that's what he deserves given the amount of work that he puts into that. So shout out to the OSG on that. All right, so like I said, we do this every week. Frozen 5. Last week we had a tough one. We went 1-4. Had a couple of close wins, a couple of teams that should have closed out and done their job, but they chose not to, such as the Baltimore Ravens falling asleep against the Eagles and not covering when they had the game well in hand. So this week we look to bounce back. I've got 4 picks I feel very strongly about. For the first time, when I get to my 5th pick, I'm just going to decide on the spot, because I have 2 interesting games that I'm trying to decide between. So when we get to that particular pick, I'll tell you which way I'm going. But this is this week's Frozen 5. Up first, we have the Browns at the Bengals. The Browns are a minus 3-point favorite, and I'm going to go with the Browns. It was announced today that the Bengals are not going to have their star running back, who they just paid not too long ago, Joe Mixon. He's out with a foot injury. And we all know that the Browns got destroyed, yes, by the Steelers. They look bad, but the Steelers do that to a lot of teams. Are going to continue to do so. So I don't hold that against them. I think it's okay. Obviously, the Bengals are nowhere near what the Steelers are, so you don't have to worry about them doing to you what the Steelers did. I think that this Browns defensive front can bully the Mixon-less Bengals. I think Myles Garrett is going to get after rookie quarterback Joe Burrow, who hasn't yet faced a pass rusher quite like this, in my opinion. And the Browns need this one. They cannot lose this game because Baker was bad last week. OBJ has that LSU fiasco where he's been banned from the team for 2 years. We'll probably talk about that in a later show. But the Browns really need this game more than the Bengals. They can't lose this. They're still 4-2, still in a fight for the division. So I think the Browns are going to win this game 26-20 in a bit of a close one, but they're going to cover the 3. Up next, we have the 49ers at the Patriots. The Patriots are a minus 2-point favorite, and I'm going to take the Patriots minus the 2. Belichick is going to be facing his former quarterback, the quarterback that he actually wanted more than Tom Brady after a while, Jimmy G, but that means he knows him well. Having been drafted by the team, Belichick had 3.5 years to learn about and study Jimmy G in case he would ever face him, and now he is. And the Patriots, they were kind of humiliated by the Denver Broncos, 18-12. The offense couldn't get moving, so to lose to a team like that, especially at home, was humiliating for them. And the 49ers looked impressive against the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday Night Football, meaning people are going to overvalue them because they're going to think, okay, the Patriots suck, 49ers are great, I'm going 49ers. No, it's a trap. Take the Patriots minus 2. The Patriots finally get in a full week of practice because of all that COVID crap that they had to deal with leading up to the Denver game, which is why they looked as bad as they did. And I think that Belichick, what he does best is he takes your best chess piece off the board. So he's going to do that with George Kittle and force those young receivers to win the game against that Patriots secondary, which they can't, boasting the Defensive Player of the Year, Stephon Gilmore. And Belichick, like I said, he knows all of Jimmy G's weaknesses, so I think that he's going to have some schemes that Jimmy G doesn't want to face and has never faced. And the Niners are going to be without top running back, fastest running back in the league, actually, Raheem Mostert, and they're going to be without both of their starting safeties. So I think Cam is going to use this as a bounce-back spot. At home, the Patriots win this game 26-17, easily covering the 2. Up next, we're going to have the Seahawks at the Cardinals on Sunday Night Football. The Seahawks are a minus 3.5-point favorite, but I'm going to take the Cardinals. I'm going to take the Cardinals plus the 3.5 in what I believe is going to be a shootout. In a shootout, or a game that you know is probably going to be a shootout, take the home team, especially if you get the points, and I'm getting both here. Seattle, they're still not a very good defense, 26th in defensive DVOA, and their best player in the secondary, Jamal Adams, is out again with a growing injury. And Seattle, honestly, this season has gotten lucky. They're 5-0, but they have won some games that they should not have won. So I think that their luck has to run out, and I think it will this week. And that Arizona defense actually is better than people think. They have a higher defensive DVOA, number 9. And their offense is number 12. Let me see, or I think the Seattle offense is number 12, something like that. But the zona defense is better than people think, and they have an opportunity to make a statement in a game that was actually flexed into Sunday Night Football. So even though I think the Seahawks win this game 35-32, I think that 0.5 is going to give me the cover. So take the Cardinals plus the 3.5. Up next, we have the Rams at the Bears, Monday Night Football. The Rams are a minus 6-point favorite, and I'm going to take the Bears plus the 6. That's too many points to give a team with a defense that's playing back up to the level that it did 2 seasons ago. And this Bears team, if you notice, the last couple of games they've played, the Rams have bullied them. They've roughed them up because you have to out-physical finesse teams like the Rams. And I like the Bears getting 3 extra days of prep off of that impressive victory over the Bucs on Thursday Night Football. And the Rams, they've been really inconsistent with the run. They don't know who their running back is, which means they have no running back. And Chicago can stop the run. They're number 5 in defensive DVOA. And what I like about Nick Foles as compared to Mitch Trubisky is that Nick Foles won't lose you games. I think that he's going to be able to hit Allen Robinson and hit Jimmy Graham in spots. And I think that they're going to do what the 49ers did last week, which is to run plays away from Aaron Donald to take him off the board. So I think the Bears are going to win this game 23-17, not even needing the plus 6. All right, this is the game. I got 2 games I'm looking at, and I've made my choice. America, we're going to have some fun. I'm going to do something absolutely crazy. I love doing this. Usually I cover when I do this, but I'm going to take a crazy game. Crazy pick. All right, we have the Steelers at the Titans. The Titans are a minus 1.5-point favorite, and I am the only person in America who's going to take the Titans minus the 1.5. I love this Titans run game. Derrick Henry is just starting to hit his stride middle of the season like he always does, fresh off of a 200-yard game. The Steelers, you may not know this, they're a little nicked up on defense, so they may not be quite as explosive or quite as bullyish as they typically are, and Ryan Tannehill can play. Let's just admit it, he can play. Since week 11 of last year, he's been a top 10 quarterback. And let's not forget that this team went to the AFC Championship for a reason, beating a team they weren't supposed to beat, the Patriots with Brady, and then another team they weren't supposed to beat, the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. And Big Ben, this is something that only sharps know in Vegas. Big Ben is not the same quarterback on the road as he is at home, and he tends not to cover as well on the road as he does at home. So like I said, nobody is picking this Titans team, but let's not forget the Eagles gave this Steelers team a fight, and we know that this Titans team is better than that Eagles team. So I definitely believe if the Eagles can do that, the Titans can do it. So again, I'm going against everybody else. I think this is a game that Vegas is trying to trap you on. They're trying to build a casino off of this game, off of all that Steelers money that people are going to lose. So I'm taking the Titans minus 1.5. They're going to win this game 23-20. Bonus picks, take a good strong look at the Texans plus 3.5. I think the blueprint is out now on how to beat the Packers, such as what we saw last week. And I think these teams are equal. Top 8 offensive DVOA for both, but both are also bottom 5 defensive DVOA. So they're more even than you think. And getting 3.5 points in the home team, I love doing that. Houston is confident because they went toe-to-toe with the team I just talked about, Tennessee, in overtime last week. Took them to overtime to beat the Texans, and they won their game before that. So it looks like they're actually playing better with Romeo Crennel as the head coach as opposed to Bill O'Brien. So I like that in this in this Texas team, and Aaron Jones is a game-time decision, meaning that if he plays, he's not going to be 100%, and he truly is the motor for that Packers offense. So take a good, strong look at the Texans plus 3.5, and take a look at another game, the Panthers plus 7.5 over the Saints. The Saints are not going to have Mike Thomas. They're not going to have Emmanuel Sanders. Emmanuel Sanders has COVID, and Mike Thomas has a hamstring injury. He's had a rough season. So I think the Panthers are going to bounce back from that tough loss that they had last week against the Bears. I don't think Kamara is enough to cover a 7.5-point spread, given that he's going to be the crux of that Saints defense, given that you're without your top 2 wide receivers. And, Drew Brees is not what he was, and this Panthers team is very underrated. So take a good, strong look at them to cover the 7.5. So to recap, we're going to take the Browns -3. We're going to take the Patriots -2. We're going to take the Cardinals plus 3.5. The Bears plus 6, the Titans -1.5, and bonus picks take a good strong look at the Texans plus 3.5 and the Panthers plus 7.5. And that is this week's Frozen 5. So as always, our picks and odds are brought to you by Westgate, the Westgate Super Contest. That's where we get our odds from, and that is what we, in a sense, participate in each year. So we're looking to get back on the winning track and try to win money, not just for ourselves, but for you as well. So to end the show, just something kind of fun. I've had this kind of swimming around in my mind for the last few weeks, going back to the NBA, and that is the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets are one of the reasons why I'm incredibly excited about this upcoming season with the moves that we're about to see, with the Lakers fresh off of a championship, LeBron winning his 4th, 17th in the history of the Lakers franchise, and just what we're going to see as far as particularly teams that we know are going to come back. The Golden State Warriors are going to be back. The Clippers are going to run it back. We got Doc Rivers in Philadelphia. We have the Boston Celtics in that young core, 1 year more mature. You still have the Toronto Raptors out there with the Coach of the Year, Nick Nurse, and you have the Brooklyn Nets. Now, there are 2 superstars that they signed in free agency, didn't really play at all. Really, they didn't play together at all. Kevin Durant set out the season with that Achilles injury, rehabbing that, getting back to hopefully 100%. And Kyrie Irving did not play much at all with knee, hamstring, and other lower body issues, as he seems to experience probably every other year. Now, don't take this for granted. Don't overlook this. Don't think that this is not a big deal, because it truly is. This Brooklyn Nets team is about to be one of the most historic teams that we've ever seen. I think this team is going to be like anything that we have ever seen in the history of basketball for several reasons. One, because both Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are both, to me, the greatest at something in the history of basketball. Kyrie Irving has the greatest, sickest handles I have ever seen. I've seen him in person. He can take over a game just with his handles alone. He's a magician. He's David Copperfield with the basketball, meaning he's impossible to stay in front of, and he's clutch. Hit one of the greatest clutch threes in the history of basketball in that 2016 finals in Game 7 with the game essentially on the line. So you have Kyrie Irving being the greatest ball handler we've ever seen, and Kevin Durant with the greatest, sickest offensive game we've ever seen. Literally, he may be the only NBA player I've ever seen without a weakness to his game. He can hit threes. He's great at threes. He's great at driving to the basket. He's great at mid-range. He can post you up. He's great at the free throw line. He is unguardable. He is longer than any player on the court most nights that he plays. And, I mean, there's just no weaknesses to his game. So he's got the greatest offensive game that we have ever seen. There's nothing you can do once Kevin Durant decides to take over a basketball game. So those 2 players on the same team, that greatness at those things is going to equal something historic that we've never seen before. And also, and this is the theater, this is where the stories are really going to come in. They're both 2 of the strangest superstars that we've ever seen as well. And they both have evolved into that. They didn't start out this way, but life in the NBA and things that they faced on and off the court sort of helped to shape them into being 2 of the strangest superstars that we've seen, with Kyrie Irving and the weird comments about the earth being flat and the reasons why he left Cleveland in that weird interview that he did on First Take, as well as saying the weird thing he said recently about basically saying he and KD can coach the team on some nights and maybe Steve Nash can coach the team on other nights, collaborative coaching, quote unquote, whatever the hell that is. But Kyrie Irving's a strange guy. Kevin Durant, strange too. Burner accounts, going after Twitter trolls, not being able to get over the divorce with Oklahoma City and Golden State, which is even more strange given that he's the one who left. So usually the one who left is the one who's supposed to have been able to get over the divorce quicker, but that doesn't seem to be the case with Kevin Durant. And that's what I love about basketball so much. We're so close to these basketball players because we see them. We see the emotions. You can physically sit closer to an NBA basketball player, an international superstar, than you can in any other sport. So basketball is so theatrical. There are so many storylines, and this Brooklyn Nets team is going to give us nothing but some of the greatest two-man basketball that we've ever seen and some of the greatest stories that we've ever seen, especially when throughout the course of the season and all sort of superstar teams that just form face some type of adversity as they learn to play together and build chemistry and figure out who the true leader of the team is. We're going to see some strange things from this Brooklyn Nets team. So I, for one, can't wait to see it. I'm glad that if it happens the way that the report happened that I mentioned in news, that the NBA season is going to start on December 22nd, that means that in less than 2 months, we're going to be able to see this live and in color on the basketball court along with all the other greats in the NBA. But I'm telling you, pay attention throughout the season, day after day, to this Brooklyn Nets team because they're going to do some things and say some things that we've never seen. And I think eventually, not this season, but the next, they're going to win a championship. And I'm here for all of it. Thanks again to the production team, as always, to Mike, Bob, and Wendy. Thank you for working with me, even though I pushed the show to a day later. To my co-host, Jay, America's other favorite co-host, thank you for always bringing the thunder. To all of our loyal listeners, to all of our new listeners who watch our video clips on YouTube, on Twitter, Instagram, and other outlets. We definitely appreciate that. We appreciate the comments. We appreciate the likes. Don't forget about the hotline that we mention on our early show every week so that you can call in, give us your analysis, tell us how much you love my opinions and how much you hate Jay's opinions. I'm here for that as well because we're going to be getting to that fairly soon. So as always, please practice social distancing. Please wear a mask. Be as safe as you possibly can. Please be prepared to vote here in, I guess, actually less than 2 weeks and 12 days to decide the next 4 years of the nation. And with that, this has been the Unfair Podcast with Jay and Jimmy. Peace.